Please do not try anything you're about to see us do at home.
Ever. We're what you call professionals.
On this episode of Mythbusters, it's a Nightingale special as Adam, Jamie, Carrie and Grant push the shape memory alloy to its limit. First, Adam and Jamie tackle the myth this tiny wire will solve the energy crisis. Later, Grant and Carrie take on the myth that Nightingale stents can cause nickel poisoning and allergic reactions. Who are the Mythbusters? Adam Savage and Jamie Heineman.
That thing kicks like a mule.
Between them, less than 1 day of professional sex experience. Joining them, Grant Imahara.
Gee, I gotta find a better place to shape my legs.
Carrie Byron. They don't just tell the myths, they put them to the test.
Not again.
What's that you've got there?
It's a piece of nitinol wire. It's a really cool shape memory alloy, which is a metal which, when heated, will return to a shape that it's memorized. And we've got a couple of nitinol-based myths to do today.
That's interesting. That's exactly what my coffee stirrer did this morning. Oh, so what are we looking at with nitinol?
Well, check this out. Someone just sent me this video of a nitinol heat engine.
Nitinol experiment 2. Ice water and hot water. A nitinol spring. Yikes.
I've heard that nitinol engines can be made to transform waste heat into free energy, basically.
Yeah, I think I've heard of that myth too. I actually think I've heard people say that they are able to collect all of the energy lost to heat in this with these nitinol heat engines, such that it could potentially bring an end to the energy crisis.
Yeah, I've heard that too, but I'm really not sure. I mean, this material has been around for 50 years, but we haven't seen it used a lot. Maybe we should start off by looking at what nitinol actually is, and see if we can get our hands on one of these heat engines.
That sounds like a good plan to me.
So nitinol was first discovered in 1959 by a scientist called William J. Buehler. He was working for the Naval Ordnance Laboratory, trying to find a strong alloy to use for nuclear missile nose cones. He found that nickel titanium in about a 50% ratio worked best. So he decided to start playing with it more or less. He'd also recently become separated from his wife, so he was more or less living in the laboratory, which gave him plenty of time to play. When he was casting nickel titanium, he found that when he dropped a hot bar of it, it hit the ground and rang like a bell, whereas when he dropped a cold bar of it, it just went thunk, like a brick of lead. It didn't bounce and it didn't ring. This was the first hint as to nitinol's two-phase Martensite behavior. It wasn't until at a lab manager meeting when they were playing with a little piece that was an accordion shape and bending it back and forth, and then one guy heated it up with a slider and it snapped back into a flat shape, that they realized that it had shape memory. And that is pretty much how nitinol was discovered, completely serendipitously, like all good things.
Nitinol's two major properties, shape memory and superelasticity, both come from a peculiar phase transformation called a martensitic transformation. Nitinol is an intermetallic compound alloy. That is, the nickel and titanium atoms have very specific locations in the crystal lattice. This allows it to develop a very ordered cubic crystal structure at higher temperatures and what is called the austenite phase. However, at lower temperatures or when under stress, it assumes what is called the martensite phase, where the crystal structure is much more complicated. In this phase, the crystal structure is able to undergo some deformation without breaking atomic bonds. This occurs when atomic planes are rearranged without slipping or permanently deforming in a type of deformation known as twining. As a result, the alloy can remember the shape of its austenite phase, even though it may experience severe deformation in the martensite phase. When heated above its transition temperature, nitinol exhibits a great deal of force as it reforms its austenite shape. Because the martensite phase also can be formed by applying a stress to the alloy, nitinol exhibits superelasticity, or an elastic range of 10 to 30 times greater than that of normal spring material. However, this behavior is only exhibited when the alloy is stressed at temperatures in the austenite range.
To shape the nitinol wire into a specific shape, we first made a jig. This jig will allow us to mold the wire into a specific shape. Once it's secured, we can put it into a furnace. It should be at a temperature of 525 degrees Celsius for about 20 minutes. Now it's time to take it out. We'll quench it in water. And then we'll put it back into the furnace at 475 degrees Celsius and leave it there for about an hour. Now we just let it air cool. When the wire is full, we can form it into any particular shape that we want. But it should have some memory properties about the shape that it had in the furnace. We can test that memory by using this heat gun. Oh wow. Look at the loop.
Oh, sweet.
Oh hey Jamie, look what I got in the mail today. It's a replica of that nitinol engine we saw in the video.
Huh, interesting. Does it work?
Well, I don't know, I haven't tested it out yet, but I'm pretty sure I figured out how it works. So as the water warms the spring contracts downwards, and this pulls down on each one of these two pulleys, like this. But because the pulleys are geared together with different sized gears, this pulley has a greater mechanical advantage over the other pulley, and so this pulley is pulled downwards by the spring, causing the entire thing to start rotating. Now, when the spring hits the cold water, it returns to its relaxed state, allowing this to perpetually run when in the presence of hot and cold water.
Oh, I don't know. It looks pretty neat, but slightly sketchy construction. Let's try it out.
All right, shall we?
Sure. There you go. Oh, that's really cool. Look at that go.
All right, now let's look at the high speed to get an idea of how fast that pulley is spinning so we can try and calculate the efficiency.
To test the efficiency of the heat engine, we hooked a small half-gram mass up to the pulleys of the heat engine such that it would be reeled in as the engine ran. Using this, and the speed at which the engine was running, and also the radius of the pulley, we were able to calculate the power output of our engine. It was very small, about 3 or 4 times 10 to the negative 4 watts. Considering that this only ran for 40 seconds, that also only output only 0.02 joules of energy, which is very small considering that it took about 195 kilojoules of energy just to heat up the hot water to make the engine run, giving us an efficiency somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 times 10 to the negative 6%.
Wow, that's not very efficient at all.
No, it isn't. I wonder how much of it's because of this crappy design, crappy machining.
Let's do some research to see if we can figure out if there are any other more efficient heat engines made out of nitinol.
Good idea.